Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a simple penny, only to discover it might be worth far more than 1 cent. Not because it's gold, not because it's ancient, but because of something most people would overlook. Today, we're uncovering the story behind the 1936 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that quietly holds history, mystery, and surprising value. At first glance, the 1936 Lincoln penny looks like any other old coin. It carries the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and a simple wheat design on the back. But this particular version, the one without a mint mark, has a story that connects directly to one of the most important periods in American history. The coin was struck in 1936, during the era of the Great Depression. This was a time when the United States was still recovering from economic collapse. Jobs were scarce, families struggled, and even small amounts of money mattered. Pennies were not just coins. They were meaningful pieces of daily survival. Every cent counted. The Lincoln penny itself had already been in circulation for decades by then. First introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, it became the first U.S. coin to feature a real person instead of a symbolic figure. By 1936, it was a familiar part of American life. Now, here's where the no mint mark detail becomes important. When a coin has no mint mark, it means it was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. Unlike other mints such as Denver or San Francisco, Philadelphia did not use a mint mark on pennies during that time. So, if you look at a 1936 penny and see no small letter beneath the date, you're looking at a Philadelphia issue. But just because millions were made doesn't mean every coin is the same. In fact, subtle differences in condition, striking quality, and rare variations can dramatically change the value of a 1936 no mint mark Lincoln penny. Let's take a closer look at the design. On the front, you'll see Abraham Lincoln's profile facing right. Above his head is the word Liberty, and to the right is the date, 1936. The phrase "In God We Trust" curves along the top edge. This design was created by Victor David Brenner, whose initials, VDB, can be found on some earlier coins but are less prominent on later issues. On the back, you'll find two wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. This is why these coins are often called wheat pennies. The design symbolizes growth and prosperity, which is somewhat ironic considering the economic struggles of the 1930s. The coin is made primarily of copper, with a small amount of tin and zinc. It weighs about 3.11 grams and has a smooth edge. While these details may seem ordinary, they are essential when identifying a genuine coin. Now, you might be wondering, if so many of these pennies were made, why do collectors care about them today? The answer lies in condition and rarity within that condition. Most 1936 pennies were heavily used. They passed through countless hands, were dropped, scratched, and worn down over time. Finding one in excellent condition today is not easy. And when collectors find a well-preserved example, especially one with sharp details and original color, the value can increase significantly. There are also special versions of this coin that are even more desirable. For example, proof coins were struck in limited quantities in 1936. These were not meant for everyday use but were specially made for collectors. Proof coins have a mirror-like finish and extremely sharp details. A 1936 proof Lincoln penny without a mint mark can be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on its condition. Even among regular circulation coins, small differences can matter. Some 1936 pennies show stronger strikes, meaning the design details are more clearly defined. Others may have slight variations or minor errors that make them unique. These subtle features can turn an ordinary coin into something much more valuable in terms of real market value. A worn 1936 no mint mark penny might only be worth a few cents to a few dollars. But if you find one in uncirculated condition, meaning it has never been used in daily transactions, the value can jump to $20, $50, or even over $100. And for proof coins or exceptionally preserved examples, prices can reach into the thousands. Collectors have paid significant amounts for high-grade versions of this coin. Auction records show that top-quality specimens, especially those graded by professional services, can command impressive prices. These are coins that have survived nearly a century in near-perfect condition, which is incredibly rare. Of course, with value comes the risk of counterfeits or misidentified coins. So how can you tell if your 1936 penny is genuine? First, check the date and the absence of a mint mark. It should clearly read 1936 with no letter beneath it. Next, examine the details of Lincoln's face and the wheat stalks on the back. Genuine coins will have consistent, well-defined features, even if they are worn. Pay attention to the color as well. Original copper coins tend to have a rich brown or reddish tone, depending on how they've aged. If the coin looks unusually shiny or has an unnatural color, it could have been altered. Weight is another important factor. A genuine 1936 penny should weigh around 3.11 grams. If it's significantly lighter or heavier, that could be a red flag. For serious collectors, professional grading services can authenticate and grade the coin. This not only confirms its authenticity but also provides an official assessment of its condition, which is crucial for determining value. Now let's explore some interesting and lesser-known facts about this coin. Did you know that 1936 was one of the first years the U.S. Mint resumed producing proof coins after a long break? This makes the proof version of the 1936 penny particularly significant in the world of coin collecting. Another surprising detail is how many of these coins are still out there, hidden in old collections, jars, and even forgotten drawers. People often overlook them because they seem common, but occasionally, someone discovers a high-grade example that turns out to be worth much more than expected. There's also something fascinating about holding a coin from 1936. Think about it. This small piece of copper has traveled through decades of history. It may have been used during World War II, passed through the hands of workers, shopkeepers, and families, and survived countless changes in the world. Collectors are drawn to this sense of connection. Owning a 1936 Lincoln penny is not just about its monetary value. It's about owning a tangible piece of history. It's about holding something that has witnessed nearly a century of human experience. Today, the 1936 no-mint mark Lincoln penny remains a mahbooban choice among collectors, both beginners and experienced enthusiasts. It's accessible enough for newcomers to find, yet still offers the thrill of discovering a valuable specimen. Its combination of history, design, and potential value makes it a perfect example of why coin collecting continues to captivate people around the world. It teaches patience, attention to detail, and an appreciation for the stories hidden in everyday objects. So the next time you come across an old penny, take a closer look. Check the date. Look for that missing mint mark. Examine the details, because what seems like a simple coin could be something much more. And who knows, that small, overlooked piece of copper might just carry a story and a value that you never expected. What if the small, forgotten penny sitting in your drawer right now could tell a story of wartime America, and in some cases, be worth far more than just 1 cent? Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of the 1940 Lincoln penny, a coin that many people overlook, but collectors quietly search for. The 1940 Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced in the United States at the Denver Mint. The small D mint mark you'll find on the front of the coin, just below the date, tells you it was struck in Denver. At first glance, it looks like any ordinary old penny. It carries the familiar image of Abraham Lincoln on the front, and on the back, you'll see 2 wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. Because of this design, it belongs to what collectors call the Wheat Penny series. To understand why this coin matters, we need to step back into the year 1940. America was just emerging from the Great Depression, and although the country had not yet officially entered World War II, the global situation was tense. Industries were beginning to shift, and resources were becoming more important than ever. Coins like the 1940 penny were part of everyday life, used in groceries, transportation, and daily transactions. They passed through millions of hands, often without a second thought. The design of this penny dates back to 1909, when the Lincoln cent was first introduced to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. It was the first U.S. coin to feature a real person instead of a symbolic figure. The design was created by Victor David Brenner, and it remained largely unchanged through the 1940s. By 1940, the design was already familiar to Americans, which makes it easy to overlook today. Now let's talk about what makes the 1940 penny unique. First, the metal composition. This coin is made mostly of copper, about 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. That gives it its rich, reddish-brown color when new. Over time, many of these coins have darkened due to oxidation, turning brown or even almost black. However, collectors place a premium on coins that still retain some of that original red color. The D mint mark is another key feature. Not all 1940 pennies were made in Denver. In fact, millions were produced in Philadelphia, which did not use a mint mark, and also in San Francisco, marked with an S. The Denver Mint struck over 81 million pennies that year. That may sound like a huge number, but when you consider how many have been lost, worn down, or damaged over the decades, finding one in excellent condition becomes much more difficult. Condition is everything in coin collecting. A 1940 D penny that has been heavily circulated might only be worth a few cents above its face value. But a well-preserved example, especially one with sharp details and minimal wear, can be worth significantly more. Coins that have never entered circulation, known as uncirculated coins, are especially desirable. Now here's where things get even more interesting. Certain errors and varieties can make a 1940 D penny much more valuable. One example is a repunched mint mark. This happens when the mint mark is struck more than once in slightly different positions, creating a shadow-like effect. These kinds of errors were more common in older coins because minting technology was less precise than it is today. If you happen to find a 1940 D penny with a noticeable repunched mint mark, you could be holding something special. Another feature collectors look for is strong strike quality. Not all coins were struck with the same level of detail. Some may have weak areas, especially around Lincoln's hair or the wheat stalks on the reverse. A coin with a crisp, fully detailed strike stands out and commands higher value. So how much is a 1940 D penny actually worth? For a typical circulated coin, you might see values ranging from a few cents up to $1, depending on condition. But when you move into higher grades, the numbers change quickly. A well-preserved, uncirculated example can sell for $10, $20, or even $50. And coins with exceptional quality, especially those graded by professional services, can reach into the hundreds. There have been auction sales where top-grade 1940 D pennies, particularly those with a bright red finish and near-perfect condition, have sold for several $100s. These are not coins you find every day. They are carefully preserved pieces that have survived decades without losing their original luster. Now you might be wondering, how can you tell if your 1940 D penny is real or valuable? Start by looking at the date and mint mark. Make sure the D is clearly visible and not altered. Counterfeit coins do exist, but they are relatively rare for this type of penny. More common are altered coins, where someone might try to add a mint mark to increase value. Next, examine the overall condition. Look at Lincoln's face, the sharpness of the lettering, and the details in the wheat stalks. If these features are worn down, the coin has likely been heavily circulated. If they are sharp and clear, you may have a higher grade coin. Color is another important factor. Coins are often described as red, red-brown, or brown. Red coins are the most valuable because they retain their original mint color. Red-brown coins show a mix of original color and aging, while brown coins are fully toned from circulation and exposure. Weight and size can also help confirm authenticity. A genuine 1940 D penny should weigh about 3.11 grams and have a diameter of 19 millimeters. If something feels off, it might be worth having the coin checked by a professional. Here's a surprising detail that many people don't know. During the early 1940s, the U.S. Mint was preparing for changes in metal usage due to the war. Just a couple of years later, in 1943, pennies would be made from steel instead of copper to conserve materials for the war effort. That makes the 1940 D penny part of the last few years of traditional copper pennies before that dramatic shift. Another fun fact is how these coins traveled. A single 1940 D penny might have been used to buy a newspaper, pay for a bus ride, or purchase a piece of candy. Could have passed through dozens or even hundreds of hands, each one adding to its invisible history. Today, holding one of these coins is like holding a small piece of everyday life from over 80 years ago. Collectors love the 1940 D penny for several reasons. It's part of a larger series, which makes it appealing for those trying to complete a full set of wheat pennies. It's also relatively affordable compared to rarer coins, making it accessible for beginners. At the same time, high-grade examples provide a challenge for advanced collectors who are always searching for the best possible condition. There's also a certain emotional connection. Coins like this remind people of a different time in American history. They represent resilience, change, and the everyday lives of millions of people. For many collectors, it's not just about the value, but about the story behind the coin. If you're thinking about starting a collection, the 1940D penny is a great place to begin. It's easy to find, yet still offers opportunities for discovery. You might come across different conditions, subtle variations, or even an error that sets your coin apart. And here's the part that keeps collectors searching. Every coin has a story, but not every story is obvious at first glance. The 1940D penny may look simple, but under the right light, with careful attention, it can reveal details that most people miss. So the next time you come across an old penny, don't ignore it. Take a closer look. Check the date, look for that small D mint mark, and examine the details. You might just discover that something so small can carry both historical significance and real value. Because in the world of coin collecting, it's often the quiet, ordinary pieces that hold the most surprising secrets. And the 1940D Lincoln penny is a perfect example of how history, craftsmanship, and curiosity can come together in a single cent. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and discovering that this tiny piece of copper has a story that stretches back over 80 years. A story tied to a world on the brink of war, to changing metal supplies, and to collectors who still search for the finest examples today. That's exactly what makes the 1941 Lincoln penny with no mint mark so fascinating. At first glance, the 1941 Lincoln penny doesn't look unusual. It's a 1-cent coin just like countless others. But this specific version, the one without a mint mark, holds a quiet importance in American coin history. It was struck in Philadelphia, at a time when the United States Mint did not place mint marks on coins produced there. So, if you look at a 1941 penny and don't see a small letter under the date, that means it came from the Philadelphia Mint. This coin is part of the Lincoln Wheat Cent series, first introduced in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln. By 1941, the design had already become familiar across the country. On the front, you see Lincoln's profile facing right with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the date to the right. On the back, 2 wheat stalks curve along the edges, framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. This design would remain until 1958, becoming one of the most recognized coin designs in American history. To really understand the 1941 penny, you have to step back into the world of the early 1940s. The United States had not yet entered World War II, but the global tension was rising quickly. Resources were becoming more important, and metals like copper and tin were already being watched closely. In 1941, pennies were still made primarily from copper, with a small amount of tin and zinc. This composition would change just a year later in 1942 and especially in 1943, when copper was needed for the war effort and steel pennies were introduced instead. So the 1941 penny represents one of the last full years of the traditional bronze composition before wartime changes began. That alone gives it a special place in history. It's like a snapshot of a moment just before everything shifted. In terms of production, the Philadelphia Mint struck over 887 million pennies in 1941. That might sound like a huge number, and it is. Because of this, most 1941 no-mint mark pennies are not considered rare in circulated condition. You can still find them in old collections, coin jars, or inherited boxes of coins. But that doesn't mean they aren't valuable. The real story lies in condition, quality, and the possibility of rare errors. When it comes to features, the 1941 penny is made of 95% copper, with the remaining 5% made up of tin and zinc. It has a smooth edge, weighs about 3.11 grams, and measures 19 millimeters in diameter. The design is simple, but collectors pay close attention to details like the sharpness of Lincoln's hair, the clarity of the wheat stalks, and the presence of original red color. Color is actually one of the most important factors in determining value. Freshly minted pennies have a bright, reddish tone. Over time, as they circulate and are exposed to air, they darken to brown. Collectors classify these coins as red, red-brown, or brown. A 1941 penny with full original red color and nowhere can be worth significantly more than a dark, circulated example. Now let's talk about what really gets collectors excited: errors and high-grade coins. While most 1941 pennies are common, certain variations and mistakes can make them stand out. For example, there are double die errors where parts of the design appear slightly duplicated. These can be subtle, often visible in the lettering or the date. There are also off-center strikes where the coin was not properly aligned during minting, leaving part of the design missing. Another interesting feature to look for is strong strike quality. Some coins from 1941 were struck with exceptional detail, especially on the wheat ears and Lincoln's portrait. These high-quality examples, especially in uncirculated condition, are much harder to find. When we look at real market values, the difference in condition becomes very clear. A worn 1941 no-mint mark penny might only be worth a few cents to a collector. But in uncirculated condition, especially with a red finish, the value can climb quickly. Coins graded at the highest levels, such as MS-65 or above, can sell for hundreds of dollars. In rare cases, exceptionally preserved examples have reached even higher prices at auction. For instance, a beautifully preserved 1941 Lincoln penny with full red color and sharp details has been known to sell for over $1,000 in top condition. These are coins that look almost as if they were just minted, despite being over 80 years old. That's the kind of quality collectors are always searching for. Of course, with any collectible item, there is always the question of authenticity. How can you tell if a 1941 penny is real? The good news is that these coins are not commonly counterfeited compared to rarer dates. But it's still important to know what to look for. First, check the weight. A genuine 1941 penny should weigh around 3.11 grams. If it's significantly lighter or heavier, that could be a red flag. Next, examine the details. The lettering should be sharp and consistent, not blurry or uneven. The surface should show natural where if it has been circulated, rather than strange textures or unusual coloring. Also, remember that a genuine 1941 Philadelphia coin will not have a mint mark. If you see a letter like D or S under the date, that means it was minted in Denver or San Francisco, not Philadelphia. Another tip is to use a magnet. Since 1941 pennies are made mostly of copper, they should not be attracted to a magnet. If your coin sticks to a magnet, it is likely not genuine or has been altered. Beyond its value and authenticity, the 1941 penny has some fun and surprising aspects. For one, it was produced during a year when the United States was still at peace, just months before the attack on Pearl Harbor changed everything. This makes the coin a kind of historical marker, representing the last moments before America entered World War II. Another interesting detail is how widely these coins traveled. Millions were produced, and they circulated across the country, passing through countless hands. Some may have been used to buy a newspaper, a loaf of bread, or a bus ride. Each coin carries an invisible history of the people who used it. Collectors today are drawn to the 1941 penny not just because of its potential value, but because of its connection to history. It's a coin that feels accessible, yet meaningful. You don't need to be a wealthy collector to own one, but finding a truly exceptional example can still feel like discovering hidden treasure. There is also a certain satisfaction in searching for these coins. Many collectors enjoy going through old rolls of pennies, hoping to spot that one coin with a brighter color, sharper detail, or unusual feature. It's a hobby that combines patience, knowledge, and a bit of luck. Over time, the appreciation for coins like the 1941 Lincoln penny has only grown. As more people become interested in history and tangible collectibles, these small pieces of the past continue to gain attention. They remind us that value isn't always about size or appearance. Sometimes, the smallest objects carry the biggest stories. So the next time you come across a penny, take a closer look. Check the date. Look for that missing mint mark. Examine the color and detail. You might just be holding a piece of history that has traveled through decades to reach you. And who knows, that ordinary-looking coin in your hand could be far more than just 1 cent. It could be a connection to another time, a hidden collectible, or even the beginning of your own journey into the fascinating world of rare coins. What if the penny sitting quietly in your collection was born in the middle of a world at war and carries a story far more powerful than its tiny size suggests? Today, we're talking about the 1942 Lincoln penny, a small copper coin that connects directly to one of the most intense periods in American history. At first glance, it may look like just another old cent. But when you understand where it came from, how it was made, and what makes certain examples special, you begin to see why collectors still search for this coin with real excitement. The 1942 Lincoln penny was minted in Denver during a time when the United States was fully involved in World War II. After the attack on Pearl Harbor in late 1941, the entire country shifted into wartime production. Factories that once made consumer goods were now focused on military supplies. Metals like copper became critical for ammunition, wiring, and equipment. Even though pennies continued to be produced, the pressure on resources was growing. The U.S. Mint had to balance everyday coin production with the urgent needs of the war effort. That makes 1942 one of the final years before a dramatic change. Just 1 year later, in 1943, pennies would be made from steel instead of copper to conserve materials, so the 1942 penny represents the end of an era. It's one of the last traditional bronze Lincoln cents struck before the famous steel cents took over. That alone gives it a unique place in American coin history. The coin itself follows the classic Lincoln cent design that had been in use since 1909. On the front, you'll see the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln, facing to the right. This design was created by Victor David Brenner and was the first time a real person appeared on a regular U.S. coin. Above Lincoln's head is the word Liberty, and the year 1942 appears to the right. Just below the date, you'll find the small but important D mint mark, showing that this coin was produced in Denver. On the back, the design features 2 wheat stalks curving along the sides, with the words 1 cent and United States of America in the center. At the top, it reads E pluribus unum. This is why collectors often call these coins wheat pennies. The metal composition of the 1942 penny is mostly copper, mixed with a small amount of tin and zinc. This gives the coin its warm brown or reddish tone. When these coins were new, they had a bright, almost glowing red color. Over time, as they were used and exposed to air, many turned darker brown. Now here's where things start to get interesting. Not all 1942 pennies are the same in value. In fact, most of them are quite common. The Denver Mint produced over 200 million of these coins. That means you can still find them today in collections, coin jars, or inherited boxes of old change. But within that large number, there are certain versions that stand out. And these are the ones collectors pay attention to. One of the most talked about varieties involves something called a D over D mint mark error. This happens when the mint mark was punched into the coin die more than once, slightly misaligned. The result is a doubling effect, where you can see a faint second D underneath or beside the main 1.0. The untrained eye, it might look like a small smudge. But to a collector, it's a fascinating error that tells a story about how coins were made back then. These kinds of mistakes were more common in earlier decades, when mint marks were added by hand rather than as part of the main design. Another detail that affects value is the condition of the coin. Collectors use a grading system to describe how well a coin has been preserved. A heavily worn 1942 penny might only be worth a small amount over its face value. But a coin that has been kept in excellent condition, with sharp details and original color, can be worth significantly more. Coins that still have their original red color are especially desirable. These are often labeled as red or RD by grading services. A bright red 1942 penny in near-perfect condition can sell for much higher prices than a darker, worn example. There have been auction sales where high-grade 1942 pennies reached impressive values. While most circulated coins might sell for a few cents to a few dollars, uncirculated examples in top condition have sold for hundreds, and in rare cases even over $1,000. The exact price depends on factors like color, surface quality, and whether the coin has any unique features or errors. So how can you tell if you have a valuable 1942 penny? First, check the date and mint mark carefully. Look for the year 1942 and the small d below it. Make sure the numbers and letters are clear and not altered. Some counterfeit coins are made by modifying other dates or adding fake mint marks. Next, examine the surface of the coin. Look for sharp details in Lincoln's hair and the wheat stalks on the back. The more detail you see, the less the coin has been worn down over time. Then, Check the color. A bright reddish tone usually indicates less exposure and better preservation. However, even brown coins can have value if they are in excellent condition or have rare features. If you suspect you have an error coin, such as the D over D variety, you may need magnification to see it clearly. A simple coin loupe can help reveal details that aren't visible to the naked eye. For anyone serious about collecting or selling, having the coin professionally graded can make a big difference. Certified coins often sell for higher prices because buyers trust the condition and authenticity. Here's a surprising fact. During 1942, while most pennies were still made of copper, experiments were already underway to find alternative materials. The following year's steel cents were a direct result of these efforts. That means the 1942 penny sits right at the turning point between two very different eras in coin production. Another interesting detail is that some 1942 pennies were struck with slightly different finishes, depending on how the dies were prepared. These subtle differences can create variations in appearance that collectors enjoy studying and comparing. There's also the human side of the story. Imagine the workers at the Denver Mint in 1942. They were producing coins during a time of uncertainty and global conflict. Every coin they struck was part of a larger system that kept the economy moving, even as the country focused on the war. For many collectors today, owning a 1942 penny is like holding a small piece of that history. It's not just about the value. It's about the connection to a moment in time when even the smallest objects carried significance. Collectors love this coin because it offers a mix of accessibility and hidden potential. It's easy to find, which makes it a great starting point for beginners. But it also has enough variety and historical importance to keep experienced collectors interested. Some people enjoy searching through rolls of pennies, hoping to find a high-grade example or a rare error. Others focus on building complete sets of wheat pennies, where the 1942 plays an important role. And then there's the thrill of the hunt. The idea that a coin you already own, or one you might find unexpectedly, could be worth far more than you think. That sense of discovery is what keeps the hobby alive. As you look at a 1942 Lincoln penny, take a moment to think about its journey. From the Denver Mint to someone's pocket, through decades of change, and finally into your hands. It has survived time, circulation, and history itself. So the next time you come across an old penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Check the date. Look for that small D. Examine the details and the color. Because hidden within that simple coin could be a story, a piece of history, and maybe even a surprising amount of value waiting to be uncovered. And that's the fascinating world of the 1942 Lincoln penny. A coin that proves even the smallest pieces of metal can carry the weight of history, mystery, and possibility. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and realizing it could be worth far more than 1 cent. Not because it's made of gold, not because it's ancient, but because of a quiet detail most people overlook. Today, we're talking about a coin that millions have seen, but very few truly understand. The 1948 no-mint mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, the 1948 Lincoln penny looks completely ordinary. It carries the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln on the front, just like countless other pennies. But this particular coin, struck in 1948 without a mint mark, holds a story that connects American history, post-war recovery, and the subtle details that collectors watch closely. The 1948 Lincoln penny was produced shortly after the end of World War II. America was transitioning from a wartime economy back to peacetime life. Factories that once made weapons were shifting back to consumer goods, and the nation was rebuilding and growing. During this time, the United States Mint was busy producing coins to meet the demands of a booming economy. In 1948, pennies were struck at 3 different locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The coins from Denver and San Francisco carry small mint marks, a D or an S, just below the date. But coins struck in Philadelphia did not carry any mint mark at all. That's why when you see a 1948 penny with no mint mark, it means it was made in Philadelphia. Now here's where it gets interesting. The Philadelphia Mint produced a very large number of pennies that year, over 317 million to be exact. That might make you think this coin is extremely common, and in many ways it is. But as collectors know, value doesn't come only from how many were made. It comes from condition, rarity within grades, and sometimes small but important variations. The 1948 Lincoln penny is made mostly of copper, about 95% copper with small amounts of tin and zinc. It has that classic reddish-brown color when it's fresh, although many have darkened over time due to oxidation. On the front, you'll see Lincoln facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1948 to the right. Flip the coin over, and you'll find the iconic wheat ears design, which is why these are often called wheat pennies. Two wheat stalks curve along the edges, framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. At the top, it reads E pluribus unum, meaning out of many, one. Even though millions were made, not all 1948 no-mint mark pennies are equal. Most of the ones you find in circulation are worn, with scratches, faded details, and a dull brown color. These are usually worth only a few cents, maybe slightly more to collectors. But when you step into the world of high-grade coins, everything changes. A 1948 penny that has been preserved in near-perfect condition, especially with its original red luster, can be surprisingly valuable. Collectors use grading systems to evaluate coins, ranging from heavily worn to mint state. A coin graded MS65 or higher, meaning it's in excellent condition with minimal flaws, can sell for dozens or even hundreds of dollars. And if the coin is graded at the very top levels, like MS67 with a bright red color, the value can jump dramatically. Some examples have sold for over $1,000 at auction. That's a huge leap from 1 cent to 4 figures, all based on condition. There's also something else collectors look for with the 1948 penny, and that's errors. Errors are mistakes made during the minting process, and they can make a coin much more valuable. For example, a double die error, where parts of the design appear slightly duplicated, can increase the coin's worth significantly. These errors are not common, but they do exist, and when found, they attract serious attention from collectors. Another detail that matters is the color classification. Coins are often labeled as brown, red-brown, or red. A full red 1948 penny, meaning it still has most of its original mint color, is much more desirable than a darker, oxidized one. That's because copper naturally changes color over time, so preserving that original red tone is rare. Now you might be wondering, how can you tell if your 1948 penny is valuable or just another ordinary coin? Start by checking the date carefully. Make sure it clearly reads 1948 and hasn't been altered. Then look below the date. If there is no letter, no D, and no S, you have the Philadelphia version, the no-mint mark coin we're discussing. Next, examine the condition. Look at Lincoln's face and the wheat ears on the back. Are the details sharp and clear, or are they worn down? A coin with strong details and minimal scratches is always more valuable. Also, pay attention to the color. Does it still have a bright, reddish shine, or has it turned dark brown? That color difference alone can mean a big change in value. If you suspect your coin might be in excellent condition or has an unusual feature, it may be worth having it professionally graded. Certified coins often sell for higher prices because buyers trust their authenticity and condition. Speaking of authenticity, fake coins do exist, although the 1948 penny is not the most commonly counterfeited. Still, it's important to be cautious. Real pennies from 1948 will have a consistent weight, about 3.11 grams, and a solid copper composition. The details should look natural, not overly sharp or strangely blurred. Be especially careful with coins that appear too perfect or have unusual textures. Sometimes, altered coins are passed off as rare versions. A magnifying glass can help you spot inconsistencies in the lettering or design. Here's a surprising detail that many people don't realize. Even though the 1948 penny is not considered rare in terms of mintage, it plays an important role in completing collections. Many collectors aim to build a full set of Lincoln wheat pennies, which were minted from 1909 to 1958. The 1948 no-mint mark coin is a necessary piece of that puzzle, especially in high-grade condition. Another fun fact is that coins like this were once part of everyday life. People used them to buy candy, newspapers, or bus fare. Today, those same coins are carefully stored in albums, holders, and vaults, appreciated not for what they can buy, but for the history they represent. Collectors also love the 1948 penny because it sits at an interesting point in history. It reflects a time when America was rebuilding, growing, and stepping into a new era. Holding one of these coins is like holding a small piece of that moment. Over the years, the Lincoln penny design has changed, but the 1948 version still carries that classic wheat reverse that many collectors find iconic. It's simple, elegant, and instantly recognizable, so why do collectors continue to search for this coin today? It's not just about money. It's about the thrill of discovery. It's about finding something valuable in a place where others see nothing special. It's about understanding the story behind a small object that has traveled through decades of history. For some, it starts with a single coin found in a jar or passed down from a relative. For others, it becomes a lifelong passion. And coins like the 1948 no-mint mark Lincoln penny are often where that journey begins. The next time you come across an old penny, don't ignore it. Take a closer look. Check the date, the details, the color. Because hidden among ordinary coins, there are always a few that carry extraordinary value. And who knows? That small, copper coin sitting quietly in your collection right now might have a story waiting to be discovered. What if a simple penny sitting in a forgotten jar or tucked away in an old drawer could quietly hold more value than you ever imagined? Not because it looks flashy, not because it's made of gold, but because of its story, its history, and the tiny details most people never notice. Today, we're uncovering the quiet mystery behind the 1949 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that millions have seen, but very few truly understand. The 1949 Lincoln penny is one of those coins that often slips under the radar. At first glance, it looks like any other old penny. It carries the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the classic wheat ears design on the back. But what makes this coin special is not what you immediately see, it's what you don't see. There is no mint mark on it, and that small absence tells an important story. To understand this coin, we need to step back into the late 1940s. America was just coming out of World War II. The country was rebuilding, industries were booming again, and everyday life was returning to normal. Coins were being produced in large numbers to meet the demands of a growing economy. In 1949, the United States Mint continued producing Lincoln wheat pennies, a design that had already been in circulation for decades since its introduction in 1909. The Lincoln penny itself was a groundbreaking coin when it was first released. It was the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure instead of a symbolic image. The man on the coin, Abraham Lincoln, had become a powerful symbol of unity and leadership. By 1949, his image had become deeply familiar to Americans, representing stability in a rapidly changing world. Now, let's talk about that missing mint mark. In 1949, pennies were struck at 3 main mint locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Coins from Denver carry a small D mint mark, while coins from San Francisco have an S. But coins minted in Philadelphia, which was the primary mint facility, did not carry any mint mark at all. So when you see a 1949 penny with no mint mark, it means it was produced in Philadelphia. At first, that might not sound very special. After all, Philadelphia produced hundreds of millions of pennies that year. In fact, over 217 million 1949 pennies were minted there. But here's where things get interesting. While the total number may seem large, the number of coins that survive today in high-quality condition is much smaller. And that's where value begins to grow. Let's look closer at the coin itself. The 1949 Lincoln penny is made mostly of copper, about 95%, with a small amount of tin and zinc. It has a rich reddish-brown color when it's in its original state, though many have darkened over time due to circulation and exposure to air. On the front, you'll see Lincoln's profile facing right. Above his head is the word Liberty, and in front of him is the date, 1949. Just below the date, you'll notice there is no mint mark, confirming it was struck in Philadelphia. The phrase "In God We Trust" arches across the top. On the back, the design features 2 wheat ears framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. At the very top is the motto E pluribus unum. This design is why these coins are often called wheat pennies, and it remained in use until 1958. Now, here's where collectors start paying close attention. Not all 1949 no-mint mark pennies are equal. The condition of the coin plays a huge role in determining its value. Coins that have been heavily used, scratched, or worn down are usually worth only a small amount above their face value. But coins that have been preserved in near-perfect condition, especially those with their original red color, can be worth significantly more. In the world of coin collecting, these are often referred to as red coins, meaning they still retain that bright copper shine from when they were first minted. These are far more desirable than brown or red-brown coins, which show signs of aging. Now let's talk about real value. A typical circulated 1949 Philadelphia penny might be worth anywhere from a few cents to maybe $1 or $2. But when you step into the world of uncirculated coins, the numbers begin to change. High-grade examples, especially those graded by professional services, have sold for hundreds of dollars. In some cases, exceptionally well-preserved coins with strong detail and full red color have reached prices in the range of several $100s at auction. And then there are the rare exceptions. Occasionally, a coin surfaces that has an unusual error or an extraordinary level of preservation. These are the coins that can surprise collectors and drive prices even higher. Speaking of errors, while the 1949 no-mint mark penny is not widely known for dramatic minting mistakes, there are still some minor errors that collectors look for. These can include double dies, where parts of the design appear slightly duplicated, or small off-center strikes. Even subtle variations can make a big difference to the right collector. So how can you tell if your 1949 penny is real and worth a closer look? First, check the date carefully. Make sure the numbers are clear and not altered. Next, confirm the absence of a mint mark just below the date. Then, examine the coin's condition. Look at Lincoln's face, the sharpness of the wheat ears, and the clarity of the lettering. Weight can also be a clue. A genuine 1949 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. If it's significantly lighter or heavier, that could be a sign of damage or even a counterfeit. While fake pennies from this era are not extremely common, altered coins do exist, especially those that have been modified to appear more valuable. One useful tip is to compare your coin with verified images from trusted sources. Small details matter, and even slight differences can help you spot something unusual. If you believe your coin might be valuable, having it evaluated by a professional grading service can provide clarity and confidence. Now here's something many people don't realize. Coins like the 1949 Lincoln penny are not just about money. They are pieces of history. Each coin has passed through countless hands, been part of everyday transactions, and quietly witnessed decades of change. Holding one is like holding a small piece of the past. Another interesting fact is that during this era, pennies were still made primarily of copper, unlike modern pennies which use a zinc core. This gives older coins a different feel, weight, and even sound. Some collectors say they can tell the difference just by dropping the coin gently onto a surface. And here's a surprising detail. Many valuable coins are discovered not in collections, but in ordinary places. Old jars, inherited boxes, forgotten drawers. People often overlook these coins because they seem so common. But sometimes, the difference between an ordinary penny and a collectible one comes down to tiny details that most people never check. Collectors love the 1949 no-mint mark penny for several reasons. It represents a stable period in American history, it carries a classic design, and it offers an accessible entry point into coin collecting. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars to own one, but if you're lucky enough to find a high-grade example, it can still feel like discovering hidden treasure. There's also a sense of connection. When you hold a coin from 1949, you're holding something that existed in a completely different world. A world without smartphones, without the internet, where everyday purchases were made with coins just like this one dot, and that's what makes this penny so fascinating. It's not just about rarity or value. It's about the story behind it, the journey it has taken, and the possibility that something so small and ordinary could hold unexpected significance. So the next time you come across an old penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Check the date. Look for that missing mint mark. Examine the details, because sometimes the most overlooked coins are the ones that end up telling the most interesting stories. And who knows? That quiet little 1949 Lincoln penny sitting unnoticed somewhere right now might just be waiting for someone curious enough to discover what it's really worth. What if a simple penny, something most people wouldn't even bother picking up off the ground, could quietly carry a story of post-war America, and in the right condition, be worth far more than 1 cent? Today, we're taking a closer look at a coin that often gets overlooked, yet holds a fascinating place in history, the 1950 Lincoln penny. At first glance, the 1950 Lincoln cent doesn't seem extraordinary. The small, copper-colored, and familiar. But behind that modest appearance is a story tied to a time when the United States was stepping into a new era. This coin was minted in 1950 at the Denver Mint, which is why you'll find a small D mint mark just below the date on the front of the coin. The Lincoln penny itself had already been around for over 4 decades by 1950. First introduced in 1909 to honor Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday, it was the first U.S. coin to feature a real person. By 1950, it had become a staple of everyday life, passing through countless hands during a period of growth, optimism, and change. To understand the significance of the 1950 D penny, we need to look at the time it was made. The world had just come out of World War II, and America was entering a period of economic expansion. Industries were booming, families were growing, and money was moving faster than ever. Coins like the Lincoln penny were being produced in huge numbers to keep up with demand. In 1950, the Denver Mint struck over 334 million Lincoln cents. That might sound like a massive number, and it is, but here's where things get interesting. Despite the high mintage, finding one in truly high-grade condition today is not as easy as you might think. The coin itself is made primarily of copper, with a composition of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. It has a smooth edge and a diameter of about 19 millimeters. On the front, you see Abraham Lincoln's profile, facing right, with the inscriptions "In God We Trust" above, "Liberty" to the left, and the date with the D mint mark below. On the back, you'll find 2 wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. This design is often called the wheat penny, and it remained in use until 1958, when it was replaced by the Lincoln Memorial design. Now, let's talk about what makes the 1950 D penny stand out. While it isn't considered a rare coin in circulated condition, its value changes dramatically depending on its state of preservation. Coins that were heavily used in daily transactions often show wear, scratches, and fading details. These are common and usually only worth a few cents. But coins that were carefully stored, never circulated, or preserved in mint condition tell a different story. These are the ones collectors search for. A 1950 D penny with sharp details, original luster, and minimal imperfections can be surprisingly valuable. There are also subtle variations and errors that make certain examples even more desirable. For instance, collectors often look for coins with strong, clear strikes where every detail of Lincoln's face and the wheat stalks is crisp. Weakly struck coins, where details appear soft or incomplete, are less valuable. Another factor is color. Copper coins change color over time due to oxidation. A freshly minted penny has a bright red appearance, often referred to as red by collectors. As it ages, it turns reddish-brown and eventually dark brown. Coins that retain their original red color are much more valuable, especially if they are in high-grade condition. In terms of errors, while the 1950 D penny is not famous for major mint mistakes, there are still minor varieties that can catch a collector's eye. These include slight doubling in the lettering or date, off-center strikes, or die cracks. While these errors are not extremely common, they can increase the coin's appeal and value. Now let's talk about real-world value, because this is where curiosity really kicks in. In circulated condition, a 1950 D penny might only be worth a few cents to $1. But in uncirculated condition, especially with a bright red finish, prices can climb significantly. For example, a high-grade 1950 D Lincoln penny graded MS65 red has sold for over $20 to $40 in many auctions. Even higher grades, like MS66 or MS67, can reach into the hundreds of dollars, depending on the coin's eye appeal and certification. The absolute finest examples, with near-perfect surfaces and color, have been known to command even higher prices in competitive auctions. So how can you tell if you have a valuable one? It starts with careful observation. First, check the date and look for the small D mint mark under the year. Make sure the details are clear and not worn down. Then examine the overall condition. Are Lincoln's facial features sharp? Are the wheat stalks on the back well defined? Next, look at the color. Does the coin still have a bright, reddish tone, or has it turned brown? Red coins are generally more valuable. Also, check for any unusual features like doubling, misalignment, or cracks in the design. One important thing to remember is authenticity. Because valuable coins can attract counterfeit attempts, it's always a good idea to compare your coin with verified examples or have it evaluated by a professional grading service. These services can confirm whether your coin is genuine and assign it a grade, which directly impacts its value. There's also a simple test you can do at home. Genuine 1950D pennies should not be magnetic, since they are made mostly of copper. If a coin sticks to a magnet, it's likely not authentic or has been altered. Here's a fun detail that many people don't realize. In 1950, pennies were still made from the same bronze composition used before World War II. But during the war, in 1943, pennies were made from steel due to copper shortages. By 1950, the return to copper symbolized a kind of normalcy and stability in American life. Holding a 1950D penny is like holding a small piece of that transition back to peace. Another interesting fact is how these coins traveled. Think about it. A single 1950D penny might have passed through thousands of hands over decades. Could have been used to buy candy, pay for a newspaper, or sit forgotten in a jar for years. Each coin carries a silent history of everyday life. Collectors today are drawn to the 1950D penny not because it's the rarest coin ever made, but because it represents something deeper. It's a connection to a specific moment in time, a tangible link to the early 1950s. For many, it's also an accessible entry point into coin collecting. Unlike extremely rare coins that cost thousands, the 1950D penny allows beginners to own a piece of history without spending a fortune. At the same time, advanced collectors enjoy the challenge of finding the highest quality examples. They look for coins with flawless surfaces, perfect color, and strong strikes. The difference between an average coin and a top-grade specimen can be dramatic, both visually and in value. There's also a certain satisfaction in the hunt. Imagine searching through old jars, coin rolls, or inherited collections, hoping to find that one coin that stands out. The 1950D penny often appears in these searches, and while most are common, every once in a while, someone discovers a truly exceptional piece. And that's what keeps the excitement alive. The idea that something so small and ordinary could hold unexpected value is incredibly appealing. It turns everyday objects into hidden treasures. As we come to the end of this story, take a moment to think about the coins you might already have. That jar of loose change, that old collection tucked away in a drawer. What stories are hiding there? What history are you holding without even realizing it? The 1950D Lincoln penny reminds us that value isn't always obvious. Sometimes, it's hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to look closer. And who knows? The next time you come across a simple penny, you might just see it in a completely different way. What if the small copper coin sitting in your drawer right now isn't just spare change, but a quiet survivor from a time when America was rebuilding, growing, and shaping its future? And what if that same coin could be worth far more than 1 cent? Today, we're uncovering the story of the 1952D Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary at first glance, yet carries history, subtle rarity, and surprising value that many people completely overlook. The 1952D Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, first introduced in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln. By 1952, this coin had already become a familiar part of everyday American life. Millions of people used these pennies daily, buying groceries, paying for newspapers, or dropping them into jars without a second thought. The D Mint mark on this coin tells us something important. It means the coin was produced at the Denver Mint, one of the key facilities responsible for striking coins for circulation across the United States. In 1952, the country was in the early years of the post-World War II era. Industry was booming, families were growing, and the demand for everyday currency remained strong. That year, the Denver Mint struck over 746 million Lincoln pennies. At first, that number might make the coin sound extremely common. And in many ways, it is. But here's where things start to get interesting. While many were produced, far fewer have survived in excellent condition. Time, circulation, and simple wear have reduced the number of high-quality examples dramatically. To really understand this coin, you need to look closely at its design. On the front, you'll see the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. His initials, VDB, are subtly placed near the bottom of the portrait. Above Lincoln's head, the words "In God We Trust" are clearly stamped, while "Liberty" appears on the left side, and the date 1952 sits on the right, accompanied by that small but important D mint mark. Flip the coin over, and you'll find the classic wheat design, which gives the series its nickname, the wheat penny. Two wheat stalks curve along the edges, framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. At the top, you'll see the phrase E pluribus unum, meaning out of many, one. This wheat reverse design was used from 1909 until 1958, making the 1952 D one of the later entries in this iconic era. Now let's talk about what the coin is made of. The 1952 D Lincoln penny is composed of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This gives it that rich, warm, reddish-brown color when it's well preserved. However, over time, exposure to air and handling can darken the coin, turning it into a deeper brown shade. Collectors often classify these coins based on color: red, red-brown, and brown. Fully red coins, which have retained most of their original mint luster, are the most desirable and often the most valuable. So if millions were made, why do collectors care about this coin? The answer lies in condition and subtle variations. Most 1952 D pennies spent years in circulation. They were handled, dropped, scratched, and worn down. Finding one today in near-perfect condition is surprisingly difficult. Coins graded in lower conditions might only be worth a few cents or $1. But when you move into higher grades, especially those that are uncirculated and still display their original red shine, the value can rise significantly. There are also minor errors and varieties that collectors watch for. While the 1952 D is not famous for dramatic mint errors, small details like die cracks, repunched mint marks, or slight doubling in the lettering can make certain coins more desirable. Let's look at some real-world value examples. A typical circulated 1952 D penny might sell for anywhere between a few cents and a couple of dollars, depending on its condition. But uncirculated examples can command much higher prices. Coins graded around MS65, which means they are in excellent uncirculated condition with strong visual appeal, can sell for $20 to $50 or more. If you find one graded MS66 or higher, especially with a bright red finish, the value can climb into the hundreds. In rare cases, top-quality specimens with exceptional luster and almost flawless surfaces have sold for over $1,000 at auction. These are not common, but they do exist, and they show just how much condition matters in the world of coin collecting. Now, you might be wondering how to tell if your 1952 D penny is real or if it's something altered or fake. First, check the mint mark. The D should appear just below the date on the front of the coin. It should look clean and properly aligned, not glued on or oddly shaped. Counterfeit coins sometimes have added mint marks to make them seem more valuable. Next, examine the weight and metal. A genuine 1952 D penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. If it feels too light or too heavy, that could be a warning sign. Also, pay attention to the details in Lincoln's face and the wheat stalks on the back. Authentic coins will have clear, sharp features, especially if they are in better condition. Blurry or uneven details might indicate excessive wear or a possible fake. Another tip is to look at the color. While natural aging can darken the coin, artificially altered coins sometimes have unusual tones or a polished appearance that doesn't look natural. If you ever think you have a particularly valuable example, it's always a good idea to have it professionally graded by a trusted coin grading service. This not only confirms authenticity but also gives your coin a recognized grade that can increase its market value. Here's something many people don't realize. The 1952 D penny comes from a time just before a major design change in American coinage. In 1959, the wheat reverse was replaced with the Lincoln Memorial design. That means coins like the 1952 D represent the final chapter of the wheat penny era, a design that lasted nearly 50 years. Another interesting detail is how these coins connect to everyday history. Imagine how many hands your coin may have passed through. It could have been used during the early days of television during the Korean War era, or in small-town shops across America. Every scratch and mark tells a story, even if we can't trace it exactly. Collectors are drawn to the 1952 D penny not just for its potential value, but for what it represents. It's a tangible piece of mid-20th century America. It's simple, familiar, and yet filled with hidden depth for those who take the time to look closer. There's also a psychological appeal. Coins like this remind people that valuable items don't always look special. Sometimes they blend in with the ordinary. That idea keeps collectors searching through jars, rolls, and old collections, hoping to find that one coin that stands out. And here's a surprising fact. Many high-grade 1952 pennies found today were never circulated at all. They were saved by individuals who set aside rolls of coins, either intentionally or by chance. Decades later, those forgotten coins became valuable simply because they were preserved, so the next time you come across a 1952 Lincoln penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Check the condition, the color, the details. You might be holding a coin that's worth far more than its face value. Even if it isn't worth hundreds of dollars, it still carries something just as important: history. A connection to a different time, a different economy, and a different way of life. And that's what makes coin collecting so fascinating. It's not just about money. It's about discovery, curiosity, and the thrill of finding meaning in the smallest things. So now, think about this. How many pennies have passed through your hands without a second glance? How many of them could have stories, value, or hidden details waiting to be noticed? Because sometimes, the most ordinary coin in your pocket might just be the one worth looking at twice. What if the next penny you find in an old jar, a drawer, or even your pocket change isn't just spare change, but a quiet survivor from a different America, carrying history, mystery, and maybe more value than you ever imagined? Today, we're talking about the 1953 Mint Mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, it looks like any ordinary 1-cent coin. Small, brown, and often overlooked. But behind that simple appearance is a story that connects you to a time of post-war growth, rising industry, and everyday Americans building their future 1 cent at a time. The 1953 Lincoln penny was minted in Denver, which is what the small d beneath the date stands for. This coin is part of the long-running Lincoln Cent series that began in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln. By 1953, the design had already become one of the most recognized coins in the United States. This was a period just after World War II, when the country was growing rapidly. Factories were booming, families were expanding, and coins like this one were constantly moving through the economy. They paid for groceries, bus rides, and small daily purchases. That means every 1953 penny you see today likely passed through countless hands, quietly witnessing everyday life in mid-20th century America. In terms of production, the Denver Mint struck over 700 million of these pennies in 1953. That sounds like a huge number, and it is. But here's where things get interesting. Even though millions were made, far fewer survive today in high-quality condition. Most were heavily used, scratched, worn down, or lost over time. So while the coin itself isn't rare in a general sense, finding one in excellent condition is a completely different story. Let's take a closer look at what makes this coin unique. The 1953 Lincoln penny is made mostly of copper, about 95% copper with small amounts of tin and zinc. It has that classic warm reddish-brown color when it's new, which can fade into darker brown tones over time. On the front, you'll see Abraham Lincoln's profile, facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" above, Liberty on the left, and the date with the D mint mark on the right, on the back. The coin features 2 wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. This design is often called the wheat penny, and it remained in use until 1958, just a few years after this coin was made. Now, here's something that collectors pay close attention to. Not all 1953 pennies are the same. Some have subtle differences that can make them much more valuable. One of the most important factors is condition. Coins are graded on a scale, and the higher the grade, the more valuable the coin can be. A heavily worn 1953 penny might only be worth a few cents above its face value. But if you find one that looks almost brand new, with sharp details and a bright original color, its value can rise significantly. Another key factor is the color classification. Collectors often categorize these pennies as brown, red-brown, or red. A red penny, meaning it has retained most of its original copper shine, is the most desirable. These are much harder to find because copper naturally darkens over time. But what really sparks curiosity are the errors. Mint errors are small mistakes that happen during the coin-making process. They can include doubled letters, off-center strikes, or unusual markings. While not every 1953D penny has errors, the few that do can be worth much more than standard coins. For example, some collectors have reported minor double die effects, where parts of the lettering appear slightly duplicated. Others look for die cracks or unusual surface textures. These details may seem tiny, but in the world of coin collecting, they can make a big difference. So why does this penny matter today? It comes down to a mix of history, scarcity in top condition, and the excitement of discovery. Anyone can find a 1953D penny, but finding one that stands out, one that tells a different story through its condition or a small minting error, is what keeps collectors searching. Let's talk about real value. In average circulated condition, a 1953D Lincoln penny might be worth anywhere from 2 to 10 cents. Not exactly life-changing, but as the condition improves, so does the price. In uncirculated condition, especially those graded MS65 or higher, these coins can sell for $10 to $30 or more. Now here's where it gets interesting. High-grade examples with strong red color, graded MS66 or above, have sold for over $100, sometimes even higher depending on the market. And if a rare error is involved, the value can jump even further. There have been auction listings where exceptionally well-preserved 1953D pennies reached several $100s. These are not common, but they prove that even a simple penny can carry surprising value under the right circumstances. So how can you tell if you have a real and valuable one? Start by looking at the date and mint mark. The 1953 should be clear, and the D should appear just below the date on the right side. The details on Lincoln's face should be sharp if the coin is in good condition. Check the wheat stalks on the back as well. The more defined they are, the better the coin's condition likely is. Next, examine the color. If the coin still has a bright, reddish tone, it could fall into the more valuable red category. If it's darker, it may still have value, but usually less than the brighter examples. Also, be cautious of cleaning. A cleaned coin might look shiny, but it often loses value because collectors prefer coins in their original state. Artificial shine can actually reduce what someone is willing to pay. If you suspect you have a high-quality coin or one with an unusual feature, it may be worth getting it professionally graded. That's how collectors confirm authenticity and condition, which directly impacts value. Here's a fun detail you might not know. The 1953 penny was minted during a time when pennies still played a major role in everyday transactions. Today, many people barely notice coins, but back then, a penny had real buying power. That adds a layer of nostalgia and historical importance to every coin from that era. Another interesting fact is that wheat pennies like this one are often the first coins new collectors fall in love with. They're easy to find, affordable, and full of history. The 1953D penny, in particular, sits right near the end of the wheat penny era, making it part of a closing chapter in U.S. coin design. Collectors also appreciate the consistency of the design. For decades, the Lincoln portrait remained mostly unchanged, creating a sense of continuity that's rare in modern coinage. Holding a 1953D penny is like holding a small piece of that uninterrupted history. And then there's the thrill of the hunt. People search through old jars, estate sales, flea markets, and even bank rolls hoping to find coins like this. Not because every coin is worth a fortune, but because every coin has potential. That possibility is what keeps collectors coming back. The 1953D Lincoln penny may not be the rarest coin in existence, but it represents something deeper. It's a reminder that value isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to take a closer look. Today, collectors love this coin not just for its price potential, but for its story. Connects generations. It sparks curiosity. And it proves that even the smallest objects can carry decades of history. So the next time you come across a penny, don't ignore it. Take a moment. Look at the date. Check for that small d. Because you might be holding more than just a coin. You might be holding a piece of 1953, a silent witness to a world that no longer exists, yet still lives on in the palm of your hand. And who knows, the next one you find might just surprise you. Imagine finding a small, ordinary-looking penny in your pocket, only to discover it could be worth far more than 1 cent. Not thousands, not hundreds, but enough to make you stop and look twice at every coin you own. Today, we're uncovering the story behind the 1954 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that quietly sits in collections, yet continues to spark curiosity among collectors across America. The 1954 D Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, first introduced in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln. By 1954, this coin had already become one of the most recognizable pieces of currency in the United States. The D Mint mark on this penny tells us it was struck at the Denver Mint, one of the major coin-producing facilities in the country. At first glance, the 1954 D penny might seem like just another old coin. But as with many coins from this era, the real story lies beneath the surface. This penny was produced during a time when America was entering a period of growth and stability after World War II. Coins like this were circulating widely, used for everyday purchases, gas, groceries, and small items that defined daily life in the 1950s. The Denver Mint produced over 251 million Lincoln pennies in 1954. That number might sound massive, and in many ways it is. But here's where things get interesting. Even though millions were made, not all of them survived in good condition. Many were worn down, damaged, or lost over time. And in the world of coin collecting, condition is everything. The 1954 D penny is made primarily of copper, with a composition of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. It has that classic reddish-brown appearance that collectors often describe as red, red-brown, or brown, depending on how well the original color has been preserved. The more vibrant and original the red color, the more valuable the coin can be. On the front, or obverse, you'll see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, facing to the right. Above his head are the words "In God We Trust," while "Liberty" appears to the left, and the year 1954, along with the small D Mint mark, sits on the right. On the reverse, the coin features two wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America, which is why coins from this era are often called wheat pennies. Now, here's where curiosity begins to build. If so many were made, why do collectors still care about the 1954 D penny? The answer lies in quality, rarity within condition, and subtle details that most people overlook. While circulated versions of this coin are quite common and usually worth only a few cents, uncirculated examples, especially those with strong luster and minimal marks, can be worth significantly more. Coins graded in higher mint state conditions, such as MS-65 or above, are far less common than the original mintage might suggest. These coins were never used in daily transactions. They were preserved, often stored carefully, and sometimes forgotten for decades. Even more intriguing are the rare error coins. While the 1954 D penny is not widely known for dramatic errors, small variations can still make a big difference. For example, coins with weak strikes, off-center designs, or slight doubling in lettering can attract attention from collectors who specialize in these unique imperfections. There have been auction sales where high-grade 1954 D pennies have reached impressive values. A well-preserved example with strong red coloration and minimal flaws can sell for anywhere from $20 to over $100, depending on its grade. In rare cases, exceptional specimens graded at the highest levels have sold for several $100s. While this may not sound like life-changing money, it's remarkable for a coin that once had a face value of just 1 cent, and here's something many people don't realize. The difference between a 1-cent coin and a $100 coin can come down to tiny details. Details that are often invisible to the untrained EYE.so. How can you tell if you have a valuable 1954 D penny? Start by looking for the mint mark. The small d should appear clearly beneath the date on the front of the coin. Next, examine the color. A bright, original red tone is more desirable than a dull brown surface. Then check for wear. If the details in Lincoln's hair and the wheat stalks on the back are sharp and well-defined, your coin may be in better condition than most. You should also pay attention to surface marks. Scratches, spots, and discoloration can lower the value significantly. On the other hand, a clean, smooth surface with minimal blemishes can increase the coin's appeal. If you're unsure about the condition, many collectors turn to professional grading services. These organizations assign a grade to the coin based on its condition, which helps determine its market value. While not every coin needs to be graded, high-quality examples of the 1954 D penny can benefit from professional evaluation. Now let's talk about something surprising. Even though this coin is over 70 years old, many people still have them without realizing it. Wheat pennies were widely circulated, and some still show up in old jars, drawers, or inherited collections. That means there's always a chance, however small, that a valuable piece could be hiding in plain sight. Another interesting detail is how the 1954 D penny represents the final years of the wheat penny design. Just a few years later, in 1959, the reverse design would change to feature the Lincoln Memorial instead of the wheat stalks. That makes coins like the 1954 D part of a closing chapter in American coin history. Collectors are often drawn to this sense of history. Holding a 1954 D penny is like holding a small piece of the past, a time when coins were used daily, when values were different, and when even the smallest denomination carried a sense of craftsmanship. There's also a psychological aspect to collecting coins like this. It's not just about the money. It's about the thrill of discovery. The idea that something so small and overlooked could hold hidden value creates a sense of excitement that keeps collectors searching. Some collectors focus on completing sets of Lincoln wheat pennies, and the 1954 D is an essential piece in that puzzle. While it may not be the rarest coin in the series, it plays an important role in completing the timeline. And for many, finishing a collection brings a deep sense of satisfaction. Over the years, interest in coin collecting has grown, especially among people looking for alternative ways to invest or preserve value. Coins like the 1954 D penny offer an accessible entry point. They're affordable, widely available, and rich in history. But here's the key takeaway. Not every 1954 D penny is valuable. Most are still worth only a few cents. The real value lies in condition, uniqueness, and demand. Understanding these factors can help you see the difference between an ordinary coin and a collectible one. And that brings us back to where we started. That simple penny in your hand, could it be something more? The next time you come across an old coin, take a closer look. Check the date. Look for the mint mark. Notice the color and condition, because sometimes the most ordinary objects carry the most unexpected stories. The 1954 D Lincoln penny may not always make headlines, but it quietly holds a place in American history. It reminds us that value isn't always obvious, and that even the smallest things can carry significance far beyond their face value. And who knows? The next coin you find might not just be spare change. It might be a hidden piece of history, waiting to be discovered. What if a simple penny from 1956, something you might overlook in a jar of loose change, could quietly hold more value than you ever imagined? Not because it's flashy or rare at first glance, but because of the subtle details most people never notice. The 1956 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny is one of those coins. At face value, it's just a 1-cent piece, part of everyday American life during the mid-20th century. But behind its modest appearance lies a story of history, craftsmanship, and the kind of hidden value that keeps collectors searching through old collections and forgotten drawers. This coin was minted in 1956 at the Denver Mint, which is why you'll find a small D mint mark just below the date on the front. It belongs to the long-running Lincoln Wheat Cent series, first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln. By 1956, this design had already been in circulation for nearly half a century, becoming one of the most recognized coins in American history. To understand this coin, you have to picture the time it came from. The year 1956 was right in the middle of post-war America. The economy was growing, families were expanding, and everyday transactions still relied heavily on coins like this one. Millions of pennies were struck to meet demand, and the Denver Mint alone produced over 1.3 billion of these coins that year. That number might sound enormous, and it is, which is why most people assume the 1956 D penny is common and not worth much. But that's only part of the story. Let's take a closer look at what makes this coin special. On the front, or obverse, you'll see the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. The word liberty appears to the left, and the phrase "in God we trust" arches above his head. The date, 1956, sits clearly on the right side, with that small but important D mint mark just beneath it. On the reverse side, you'll find the classic wheat design, with 2 wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. At the top, The Latin phrase, e pluribus unum, completes the design. This simple yet elegant layout remained unchanged for decades, and today it carries a sense of nostalgia that modern coins often lack. The coin is made primarily of copper, about 95%, with small amounts of tin and zinc. It has a warm reddish tone when well preserved, but over time, many of these pennies darken or develop a brown patina. Collectors often describe them as red, red-brown, or brown, depending on how much original color remains. That color can significantly impact value. Now here's where things get interesting. Even though over 1 billion of these coins were made, not all of them survived in perfect condition. Most were heavily circulated, used in everyday purchases, dropped into cash registers, and handled countless times. As a result, finding a 1956 D penny in pristine, uncirculated condition is much harder than the original mintage suggests. And condition is everything in coin collecting. A worn 1956 D penny might only be worth a few cents above face value. But a well-preserved example, especially one with its original red color, can be worth significantly more. In higher grades, these coins can sell for tens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on quality. But there's more. Collectors are always on the lookout for small details that set certain coins apart from the rest. With the 1956 D penny, one area of interest is minting errors. While there are no widely famous major errors for this specific year like some other Lincoln cents, there are still minor varieties and striking differences that can attract attention. For example, some coins may show slight doubling in the lettering or date, known as a double die effect. Others might have off-center strikes or die cracks. These imperfections happen during the minting process and can turn an ordinary coin into something much more collectible. Real auction results show just how much condition and detail matter. A typical circulated 1956 D penny might sell for $1 or less. But an uncirculated example graded at a high level, especially one with full red color, can reach prices between $20 and $50 and sometimes more. In rare cases, coins with exceptional quality or unique characteristics have sold for over $100. So how do you know if the coin you have is real, or if it's something special? First, check the basics. The date should clearly read 1956, and the mint mark should be a small D, located just below the date. The design should match the classic Lincoln wheat cent style, with sharp details if the coin is in good condition. Next, pay attention to weight and feel. A genuine 1956 D penny weighs about 3.11 grams. It should feel solid, not light or flimsy. Counterfeit coins are rare for this specific date, but they do exist, especially altered coins where someone tries to add or change a mint mark. Look closely at the mint mark itself. On authentic coins, the D should appear natural and properly aligned. If it looks unusually large, oddly shaped, or out of place, it could be a sign of tampering. Magnification can also help. A simple magnifying glass can reveal fine details like surface texture, wear patterns, and any signs of alteration. If you suspect your coin might be valuable, having it professionally graded by a reputable service can provide confirmation and potentially increase its market value. There are also some fun and surprising details about this coin that many people don't know. For instance, 1956 was one of the final years of the wheat penny design. Just 3 years later, in 1959, the U.S. Mint replaced the wheat reverse with the Lincoln Memorial design. That makes the 1956 D penny part of the closing chapter of a classic era in American coinage. Another interesting fact is how these coins connect generations. Many people remember seeing them in circulation decades ago, while younger collectors often discover them through inherited collections or coin rolls. That sense of continuity adds to their appeal. Collectors love the 1956 D penny not because it's the rarest coin, but because it represents a perfect balance between history and accessibility. It's a coin that almost anyone can find, yet still offers the thrill of discovery. You might come across one in an old jar, a family collection, or even a roll of pennies from the bank. And every time you find one, there's that small moment of curiosity. Is this just another penny? Or could it be something more? That question is what keeps collectors searching, because sometimes value isn't just about rarity. It's about condition, detail, and the story behind the coin. The 1956 D Lincoln penny may not be the most famous coin in the world, but it holds a quiet kind of significance, a reminder of everyday life in a different era. preserved in copper. So the next time you come across an old penny, take a closer look. Check the date. Look for that small D mint mark. Notice the color, the texture, the tiny details that most people ignore. Because hidden among the most ordinary coins can be something unexpectedly valuable, waiting for someone curious enough to notice. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and discovering it could be worth far more than 1 cent. Not because it's gold, not because it's ancient, but because of a tiny letter stamped on it, a small D that most people overlook. Today, we're uncovering the story behind the 1957 D Lincoln penny, a coin that millions have held, but only a few truly understand. The 1957 D Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, first introduced in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln. By 1957, this coin had already been circulating in American life for nearly half a century. It was a year like many others in the United States, a time of growth, industry, and everyday commerce. Pennies were used constantly, passed from hand to hand in grocery stores, gas stations, and small businesses across the country. The D mint mark on this coin tells an important part of its story. It means the coin was produced at the Denver Mint, one of the key facilities responsible for striking coins for circulation. In 1957, the Denver Mint struck over 1 billion Lincoln pennies. At first glance, that number might make the coin seem common and unimportant. After all, how could something made in such large quantities ever be valuable? But as any experienced collector will tell you, numbers alone don't determine value. Condition, errors, and hidden details are what truly matter. The 1957 D Lincoln penny is made primarily of copper, about 95% copper with a small amount of tin and zinc. It has that familiar reddish-brown color, though over time many of these coins have darkened due to oxidation. On the front, you'll see Abraham Lincoln's profile, facing to the right, along with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the date with the small D mint mark to the right on the back. You'll find the classic wheat design, 2 wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. This is why these coins are often called wheat pennies. This design remained in use until 1958, making the 1957 D one of the final issues before the design changed in 1959. Now here's where things get interesting. While most 1957 D pennies are still only worth a few cents or maybe $1 in circulated condition, certain versions of this coin can be worth significantly more. And it all comes down to 2 key factors: condition and errors. Let's start with condition. Coins are graded on a scale, ranging from heavily worn to completely uncirculated. A 1957 D penny that has been used in everyday transactions for decades will show scratches, fading, and loss of detail. These are very common and not especially valuable. But if you find a 1957 D penny that looks almost brand new, with sharp details, no wear, and a bright red color, that's a different story. These are known as red uncirculated coins, and they are much harder to find because most pennies were used and worn down over time. High-grade examples, especially those graded MS-65 or higher, can sell for tens or even hundreds of dollars. The difference between a worn coin and a pristine one can be dramatic, even though they were made in the same year at the same mint. Now let's talk about errors, because this is where the real excitement begins. Point 1: of the most talked about variations related to 1957 pennies is the famous double die error. While the most well-known double die is from the Philadelphia Mint without a mint mark, collectors still carefully examine 1957 D pennies for any signs of doubling. A double die error happens when the coin's design is stamped more than once, slightly misaligned. This creates a noticeable doubling effect on letters or numbers. If you ever see a 1957 D penny where the date or lettering looks doubled, it's worth taking a closer look. Even minor doubling can increase a coin's value significantly. There are also other types of errors to watch for, such as off-center strikes, clipped planchets, or die cracks. These are less common but highly sought after by collectors. Each error tells a unique story about what happened during the minting process. So how much are these coins actually worth? A typical circulated 1957 D penny might be worth anywhere from a few cents to a couple of dollars, depending on its condition. But uncirculated examples can range from $10 to over $100, especially if they have strong color and minimal imperfections. In rare cases, exceptionally well-preserved coins or those with unique characteristics have sold for even higher prices at auctions. While it's not common for a 1957 D penny to reach thousands of dollars, the possibility of finding a high-grade or error coin keeps collectors searching through rolls of pennies to this day. Now you might be wondering, how can you tell if your 1957 D penny is real or if it's something special? First, check the date and mint mark carefully. The D should appear just below the date. Make sure it looks natural and not added later. Counterfeit coins sometimes have altered mint marks, so any unusual shape or placement is a red flag. Next, examine the coin's surface. Genuine coins will have consistent wear and natural toning. If something looks too shiny or artificially altered, it could be a sign that the coin has been cleaned or tampered with. Cleaning a coin can actually reduce its value, even if it makes it look better at first glance. You should also look at the details in Lincoln's hair and the wheat stalks on the back. Strong, clear lines usually indicate a higher quality strike and better condition. If these details are worn down, the coin is likely circulated and less valuable. Using a magnifying glass can help you spot small features like doubling or tiny errors that aren't visible to the naked eye. Many collectors rely on simple tools like this to evaluate their coins at home. Here's a fun fact that surprises many people. Even though over 1 billion of these coins were made, far fewer have survived in top condition. Think about how many pennies are lost, damaged, or melted down over decades. The passage of time naturally reduces the number of high-quality examples, which is why pristine coins are so valuable today. Another interesting detail is that 1957 was one of the last years of the wheat penny design. Just 2 years later, in 1959, the reverse design changed to feature the Lincoln Memorial. That means the 1957 D penny represents the closing chapter of a classic era in American coinage. Collectors are often drawn to coins that mark the end of a design series, and this adds another layer of appeal to the 1957 D penny. So why do collectors love this coin so much today? It's not just about the money. It's about the connection to history. Holding a 1957 D penny is like holding a small piece of everyday life from the 1950s. It's a reminder of a time when pennies had real buying power, when people paid for items with cash, and when every coin had a story. There's also the thrill of the hunt. Because these coins are still out there, hidden in jars, old collections, and even loose change, anyone has a chance to find one. You don't need to be a professional collector to start looking. All it takes is curiosity and a careful eye, and that's what makes the 1957 D Lincoln penny so fascinating. It's a coin that sits at the intersection of ordinary and extraordinary. Most are simple and common, but a few hold hidden value waiting to be discovered. It challenges you to look closer, to pay attention to the details, and to see beyond the surface. So the next time you come across a penny, don't ignore it. Take a moment to check the date. Look for that small D mint mark. Examine the condition, because you never know. That tiny piece of copper in your hand might carry a story, a history, and perhaps even a value far greater than you ever expected. And once you start looking, you may never see pennies the same way again. What if the penny sitting quietly in your pocket right now could be worth thousands of dollars, and you wouldn't even notice it? It sounds unbelievable, but for one specific coin, the 1992 D Lincoln penny, that possibility is very real. The 1992 D Lincoln penny is a small, copper-plated coin produced by the United States Mint in Denver. At first glance, it looks just like any other penny from the early 1990s. It has the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. Millions of these coins were made, and most are still only worth 1 cent today. But hidden among them is a rare variation that has become one of the most talked about modern coin discoveries. To understand why this coin matters, we need to go back to 1992. During this time, the United States Mint was producing billions of pennies each year. The design had remained mostly unchanged since 1959, when the Lincoln Memorial was first introduced on the reverse side. By 1992, the Mint was focused on efficiency and high-speed production. Small design adjustments were sometimes made to improve the durability of dies or the clarity of the strike. These changes were usually subtle, and most people never noticed them. But sometimes those small changes lead to big mistakes. The 1992 D penny became famous because of a tiny detail on the reverse side of the coin, specifically in the words America. On most Lincoln Memorial pennies from that era, there is a noticeable gap between the letters A and M in the word America. This is known as a wide AM design. However, A different design existed where the letters A and M are much closer together, almost touching. This is called the close AM design. Here's where it gets interesting. The close AM design was not supposed to appear on regular 1992 pennies struck for circulation. It was intended for proof coins, which are specially made for collectors using polished dies. Somehow, a proof reverse die was accidentally used to strike a small number of regular circulation coins at the Denver Mint. The result was the 1992 D close AM penny, a rare error that slipped into everyday pocket change. What makes this coin so fascinating is how easy it is to overlook. The difference between wide AM and close AM is extremely small. You need to look closely at the word America on the reverse side. On the rare close AM version, the letters A and M are nearly touching. On the common version, there is a clear gap between them. Another detail is the position of the initials FG, which stand for the designer Frank Gasparo. On the close AM version, these initials appear slightly different in placement compared to the standard coins. The metal composition of the 1992 D penny is also worth noting. Like other pennies made after 1982, it is primarily composed of zinc, with a thin copper plating. This gives it the familiar copper color but makes it lighter than older pennies made mostly of copper. The coin weighs about 2.5 grams and has a smooth edge. None of these features make it rare on their own, but they help confirm that you are looking at a standard issue coin from that period. So why is the 1992 D close AM penny so valuable? The answer is simple: scarcity. Only a very small number of these error coins are known to exist. Unlike older rare coins that were intentionally produced in limited quantities, this coin is rare because of a mistake. And mistakes, especially ones that go unnoticed during production, can create some of the most valuable coins in the hobby. Collectors are always searching for coins that are both rare and interesting. The 1992 D close AM penny checks both boxes. It is modern enough that people might still find it in circulation, yet rare enough that very few examples have been confirmed. This combination creates excitement and drives up demand. Over the years, a few of these coins have appeared at auctions and private sales. In one well-known case, a 1992 D close AM penny in excellent condition sold for several $1,000s. Another example, graded and authenticated by a professional service, reached a price of over $10,000. These numbers can vary depending on the condition of the coin, but they show just how valuable this small piece of metal can become. Condition plays a huge role in determining value. A coin that has been heavily worn from years of circulation will be worth less than one that has been carefully preserved. Collectors use a grading scale to evaluate coins, ranging from heavily worn to perfect uncirculated condition. The better the condition, the higher the potential value. If you think you might have a 1992 D close AM penny, it's important to examine it carefully. Start by looking for the D mint mark under the date on the front of the coin. This indicates it was minted in Denver. Then flip the coin over and focus on the word America. Use a magnifying glass if possible. Check the spacing between the A and M. If they appear almost touching, you may have something special. However, not every coin that looks similar is genuine. There are cases where coins have been altered or misidentified. Some people may try to pass off a common wide AM coin as a rare close AM by damaging or modifying the surface. This is why authentication is so important. If you believe you have found one of these rare pennies, the best step is to send it to a professional grading service. They can verify whether it is real and provide an official grade. There are also a few subtle details that experienced collectors look for. On genuine close AM coins, the letters have a specific shape and alignment that matches the proof design. The overall quality of the strike may also appear slightly sharper. These details can be difficult to spot without experience, which is why expert verification is recommended. One surprising fact about the 1992 D close AM penny is how long it went unnoticed. For years, these coins circulated quietly among millions of others. It wasn't until sharp-eyed collectors began studying small design differences that the error was discovered. This shows that even in modern times, there are still hidden treasures waiting to be found. Another interesting detail is that a similar error exists for the 1992 penny without the D mint mark, meaning it was struck in Philadelphia. The Philadelphia version is also rare and valuable, adding another layer of intrigue to this story. Together, these coins have become a reminder that even the smallest details can make a big difference. Collectors today are drawn to the 1992 close AM penny for several reasons. First, it is a modern rarity, which makes it more relatable than older coins from the 1800s. Second, it represents a genuine mint error, adding a sense of mystery and excitement. And finally, it offers the possibility that anyone could discover one, even in everyday change. The idea that a valuable coin could be hiding in plain sight is what keeps people searching. It turns an ordinary activity, like checking your pocket change, into a treasure hunt. And for those who do find one, the reward can be life-changing. Even if you never come across a 1992 close AM penny, the story behind it is still worth appreciating. It shows how history, craftsmanship, and chance can come together in unexpected ways. A tiny variation in letter spacing, something most people would never notice, can transform a 1-cent coin into a prized collectible. So the next time you come across a penny, take a closer look. Pay attention to the details. You might not find a rare error, but you will start to see coins in a new way. Each one has a story, and some stories are more valuable than others. And who knows, that ordinary-looking penny you almost ignored could be the one that changes everything.